Hi, Hiram here. A couple of days ago I did a short video trying to answer a question that I got from Raven Harris asking, you mentioned twice in a video about letting the Trangia burn itself out being hard on it. Could you talk about why this is bad for it? So I did a little video and I was explaining about how my older Trangias, my first, well not the first one was the military, but my two first mini Trangias, these are ones that I used in tests where I got a boiling time and then a burnout time just to see what different stove configurations did. Anyway, the older ones that I let burn out all the time, both of them developed cracks. Here's a picture of this one. This one only has one crack, but it's a fairly large one. The first one that I had 3 or 4 cracks in it, and I sent that out to somebody who's supposed to be soldering them up for me. I haven't heard from him yet, but have to check on that. So anyway, since I did that video, I've gotten a lot of good input from people about Trangia burner cracks that they've had to deal with. Several people told me about a video called Trangia the Movie. This is from the Trangia people themselves. I will leave links down below for them. If you watch the videos, it does seem to show them advocating that you burn out the Trangia when you're done with it. Plus it says any leakage, to prevent any leakage, sorry I have to follow my notes here. To prevent any leakage, make sure the burner is empty and to store the burner in a plastic bag to prevent corrosion. Now, I don't know, it just doesn't seem any sense to me. But if you watch the videos, and again, like I said, I'll leave a link down below, it does seem to be what they're saying, to burn this out when you're done with it and then put it in a plastic bag to prevent corrosion. Now, I'm not sure, this is probably going from Swedish into English, so I took it that the corrosion meant contamination. I always put these in a plastic bag because a lot of times it goes inside your pot, and I don't want this cruddy thing, I'm not knocking the Trangia, but I don't want my burner setting in my food container, so I always do cover them in plastic. But of all the Trangia things that I've bought, only one thing actually had instructions in it. Everything else is kind of like, I don't know, just no instructions. So in this is the instructions, this little piece. I'll leave down below in the text area the what it says, but quickly what it says is the capacities, 5 centiliters of fuel, centiliters of fuel should boil 1 liter of water in 10 to 15 minutes. One filling of the burner, about 2/3 of the way up, should burn for 25 minutes. Boy, that sounds like a challenge. The burner has a screw cap and an efficient simmering. That's this part. Blah, 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 to avoid sooting, blah, blah. To extinguish, put the simmering on the burner with the cap closed. So just like that, that puts it out. Now comes I'm not sure why they put this here, but it says, try to take only as much fuel as you will need. So I took it as meaning putting fuel in the Trangia, that you carry it in this. Also it says, caution, never refill the burner unless the flame is completely extinguished. Let it cool before refilling. And again, this says, store the burner in a plastic bag or similar to prevent corrosion of cooking pans. This is where I first saw it, and I thought they meant, when they say corrosion, I took it they meant contamination. Anyway, yeah, that's how it went with that. But some of the comments that I got, one of them was Fatty Hamster. I love that name. Fatty Hamster commented, Trangia spokesperson via email was mum on the subject of transporting the stove containing fuel and suggested that the cap was for saving fuel from evaporation at camp only. Now the thing is, I find that a little hard to believe, that the cap with the all-important O-ring in it that you always have to make sure you take out. Now this one's really stuffed in here. Let me get another one here. You always have to take out this O-ring in case you try to snuff it with your cap rather than the simmer ring. But they're saying that this is used just to prevent evaporation in the campsite. I think the lid by itself would prevent evaporation if that's all you're doing is leaving it in there for the campsite. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, these things are expensive. To come by extra ones of this, I don't know. Just that the cap is only for in the campsite just doesn't make any sense. I find that hard to believe. Hunt 458 suggested, I believe the cause of the phenomena of the cracking is called season cracking, which is inherent in brass due to residual stress in the cold drawn metal during manufacture. Some cracks have been found in ammunition which was just being stored. If you look up season cracking in Wikipedia or on Wikipedia, they'll tell you all about that back with the British War and stuff. According to them, season cracking is a form of stress corrosion cracking the brass cartridges cases originally reported by the British forces in India. During the monsoon season, the military activity was reduced, so all the ammunition was stored in stables until dry weather came about. Many of the cartridges were found cracked, especially where the case was crimped at the bullet. It went on and on and on about it was found out that it was probably caused by the ammonia from horse urine combined with the residual stress in the cold drawn metal. If you ever looked at how cartridges and things are made, or even stuff like this, they just have a small blank of copper metal or brass, and it's pushed and stressed and stretched out to make all this type stuff. So there's a lot of stresses in there. I never had much experience with brass. My field was mostly with the steels, but even there you have some that type cracks with that. Looking at the photos of the season cracking that I found on the internet, it doesn't really look as bad as what some of those were. I mean, those, it looked like corrosion, like the metal had been exposed to something. This just kind of looks like what I'll explain a little bit later as a stress crack or something. Drunken Shooter commented, what do you think is the causes of the cracking? Do they become especially hot when they run out of fuel? I know that if you let a kettle boil dry, it gets really hot. However, as long as it has water in it, the water boiling seems to keep the kettle from getting too hot. Is that what you think is happening? Drunken Shooter goes on to say, damn my homeschooled science education. Well, I think Drunken Shooter is pretty much right on the mark with this, even with his homeschooled science education. What I think is happening, and this is just my opinion because I really have no way of proving it, is I think while you have alcohol in here and the flames are burning, creating vapors, the vapors are taking away a certain amount of the heat so this burner doesn't get real hot. When the alcohol is gone and all you're working on is the leftover vapors, I have a feeling that this gets like super hot compared to the other times. I wish I had a thermal camera to take a shot of this when it's burning, just to see if that is what happens. But I think that's what it's from, when the alcohol's gone and the vapors don't draw off the heat. Because to turn alcohol into vapors, heat has to be absorbed into the alcohol, which then it takes it away from this. But I think these cracks are more like fatigue cracks or stress cracks. The part of this thing getting all hot and then it cools off, and then it got hot again when I did it on the next test, and then it cools off. All of that kind of a stress of pulling and pulling on this thing. That's what I think is either fatigue or stress cracks on here. Lice Wine, the Lice Wine, also suggested that the swing between the high and low temperatures might be the cause of this. Old Timer Lee added that he suspects that the stress fracture from the uneven temp changes between the outer and the inner portions of this crimped area. From the photo, it appears that the crack starts from the outside edge and goes in. I'll put a picture up again of this crack, and it does, if you look out at the outer edge, it's much wider than in towards the thread. Outerly said, from the photo, it appears that it starts from the outside edge and moves inward. The outside edge can't heat and cool as quickly as the inner part of the circle. So, I agree with that. So I don't know what to say with this. In my opinion, letting the Trangia burn out is not a healthy thing for the Trangia burners. If this cap is only supposed to be to keep the alcohol from evaporating when you're in your campsite, and it's not used for transporting alcohol in here, then maybe the thing to do, and for me this is bad, I can't believe I'm saying this, but maybe you have to go to something like the Evernew. This is the Evernew Ultralight alcohol burner made out of titanium. I seriously doubt we'll have cracking problems with this. By the time you paid for 3 or 4 Trangias because of the cracks, it almost looks like you might as well buy something like this if you're into the Trangia mode. Which, like me, as I've always said, the Trangia was my favorite commercially bought burner. This is what I always liked working with. Again, I'm not the Graham Weenie kind of guy, so the little bit of extra weight didn't mean anything to me. A lot of people are getting this because it's much lighter, and I guess the titanium probably holds up a whole lot better. But, then the other thing is you've got these A-locks, or the Espit. I guess they're all put out by the same people, but just they throw different names on. This is an entirely different kind of brass. It looks like a cheaper, almost like it's a plate. But I haven't used these a whole lot yet, but I haven't had any cracks or anything on these. So we'll have to see what happens with this over time. I am really surprised at the number of people that told me they had cracks in their Trangias, how they bought 2 or 3 of them and they cracked right away. I thought maybe this was a problem that I had because of the tests that I do. I mean, you got to admit, I probably use my test Trangias harder than anybody else does around. Again, I'm probably repeating myself now and just babbling. The Trangia, this one that I use for camping, I've got no cracks or anything in it, but then I don't ever let it run dry. I will, if I'm going to put it away for any length of time, I'll pour out the alcohol and let it set till the alcohol evaporates away and put it away that way, but I don't burn it out in there anymore. So, I don't know. This is probably not going to put me in good with the Trangia company, but I was asked, so that's all I can say. I'm not going to, if I can help it, I'm not going to let my burners burn out. So I thank all those people that offered the ideas and suggestions. I thank you for watching. I look forward to your input, questions, remarks, helpful suggestions. And as always, watch for my buddy Max. Bye now.